This is a really great question. So let me see if I get. So Gabiole from Twitch asked the question: does it get harder or easier to design large projects with more experience? And this is a really fair question. Um, and there's lots of things going on in my mind that I want to talk about here. So I'm going to take under 10 minutes for this, but don't worry. The answer is yes. It gets harder and easier at the same time. So certain things get easier and certain things get harder. Um, as you know, I'm completely self-taught. So, I did have my background is in languages. I was a Russian language major. I did, make software. I ran my own company and stuff for years and thing. But, but every time I've had to do a project in tech, the reason that I've learned programming and stuff is because I do enjoy it and Linux and all that. But it's also because I needed something, right? The primary thing that drives me is needing a thing. I don't particularly get interested in stuff like rooted node trees unless you need a rooted node tree. Like I wanted to create a pagan language so that I could create my own markdown versions that were faster and compiled with one pass instead of two. And therefore I needed a meta language to describe that. So I made my own meta language, and then I cracked open the book that most college kids would have already read that had this section on rooted node trees. I learned everything I could about a rooted node tree, and boom. So in that regard, having had more practical experience means that the way that I've learned has provided a lot more scope and I bring a lot more to the table when I'm designing my own projects. That if as long as they're projects that fall within sort of that area that I've already done, and I'm sure a lot of other developers would have different answers on this, right? I mean, there's so many different ways to answer this question. So, but some of the things that have gotten way easier, I don't know if you've seen, but I can research things way faster. I'm not, stop bragging, I'm sorry, but I can research things in 0.001% of the time that it takes most other people to research answers to stuff, because I have been using the terminal a lot. And so when I'm working on a project, I get to get a lot of information to learn stuff fast, which is a really, really essential skill, not just for software development, yeah, but it's really essential when you have to deal with operations and security and that kind of thing. So that part gets easier, right? Just being able to write code. I've had people look at the screen before, and that's not just with me. They do it with other people, and they just see me like write Bash or something, and they're just flabbergasted. We can just pull that stuff out of our heads, all of us, and they're like, so that's obviously easier, right? It's all memorized. It's there. It's like a second language. It just comes out of you. You don't have to look it up. Does that if statement have one space, or does it have a semicolon? Whatever. You don't have to do anything. So that all gets easier. But the stuff that gets harder, I gotta tell you, and I'm experienced. It's not. I don't know if I would call it intelligence. Thank you for that. That's the right answer. But I don't want to call it that. So if there's one thing that I've noticed is that my brain works differently than other people. So in some things I'm particularly slow. So I have to hedge my bet and do that thing. And also I'm too meticulous about how I do things, to a fault. And so it slows me down and I don't finish. So having more experience makes it much harder for me, let's put it this way, to finish a large project. I mean, if you look at my GitHub or my essential that I've been working on for 8 years, there's Keg, knowledge exchange grid. There's a certain point at which you just want to chill out and pick a direction and go forward. But because I've seen so many projects get smashed into the corner because they went the wrong direction, this hesitation and this desire to get it right and can cause me problems. So having too much experience can actually harm you, because you'll overthink. And this happens in engineering all the time. So what do you end up seeing? You end up seeing people who over-engineer a solution and create tons of unnecessary abstractions. Helm comes to mind. and so you have this layer upon layer of abstraction, which just overly complicates the project, because these people who are very experienced, intelligent engineers end up putting too much into the solution when they should have just said, screw it. And having a junior or having somebody with less experience would have had the problem done and solved earlier, because they would have stuck with the immediate problem. So people who have experience can unfortunately suffer from this flaw. And the thing that's really bad about it is, because they're experienced, they think they're smarter than the people that are suggesting the simpler approaches. And so then they bulldoze their overly abstracted way through the door. And there's a lot of people who would say that the entire cloud native movement is filled with this. There are people, there's about 40% of the people out there that are still attacking the whole Kubernetes thing. And they're talking about how Kubernetes is an unnecessary over abstraction of stuff that should have been done. You should have just stuck with your server and your security updates and been done with it. And so so they'll throw Kubernetes at a problem because they have experience, or they think it's the right way, or it's going to overwhelm some mysterious phantom problem that's going to come in the future. And then you have other people that are saying, well, this has already been proven to thwart those problems that have been there all along, and therefore this is the way you should do it. So when you add those things, lots of fun chat on YouTube. Thank you guys. So that to me, it makes large projects hard. The whole agile thing was sort of invented to fight this. It was like, okay, I know you can, you're really smart, you have lots of experience, and you can engineer all kinds of crap. And yeah, oh wow, look at that. That's a great reference. But so on the one hand, yes, it becomes easier to do things, but that's also bad. Like, if you're a really fast typist, does that make you a better coder? No, it means you have to delete more of the typing you have to do. So sometimes being a slow coder makes you a better programmer, because you have to type. This is something I had to wake up and just admit, because I watched it all the time. I watched other people. So if you type, as a writer too, right? If you're writing so fast, if you can write so fast, you can write as fast as you can speak. I mean, how many times have you got in trouble by just writing exactly what you were thinking? If you were actually thinking about those words and walking around, particularly fiction writing, and you write them down and you select your words carefully, or a politician, right? Politicians, they have to pick their words very carefully. It does not, being able to be very, loquacious or verbose and say all these things and use this big vocabulary, so what? Because it can get you in trouble, because it's unnecessarily complicated, because you actually have the experience to do that. So you've given yourself so much rope that you end up killing yourself with your own experience. And I've seen that over and over again, and I have done it to myself. So that's the answer. I really like the question. I'm glad that you answered it. You asked it because these are super important things to get right. So let's actually do another conclusion here. This means that if you are a junior, which I don't think you should ever call yourself, if you're a junior, you have a lot to bring to the party. It's the juniors who have the backbone and the courage and enough experience to say that I'm going to walk if you give me shit. It's these juniors who bring to the table and ask, why are we doing this? That are some of the best contributors to a team. And if you're a manager and you don't allow the quiet people to talk and to bring their perspective on it, and they might be full of imposter syndrome, but sometimes they're going to ask. My wife is one of the greatest technical inspirations for me, because sometimes I'll talk to her problem. She goes, well, why don't you just do this? I'm like, oh my God. And so all of my experience and all of this technical background that I brought to the question, to the problem, has actually been a detriment to me, because I have all this baggage. Same thing with TAs. I would bring people who had just learned a topic, and they would be the TAs, and I would listen to how the TAs taught. And this isn't just me. The people on GoTime, when they're talking about workshops, they said the same thing. When you bring a beginner into the classroom to help other people learn, because they have just learned it and they're not filled with all this way about how it should be taught, and they don't have all this complexity in their head, they get right to the point. And so all of these experienced teachers and professors and stuff should actually sit next to these people, not to oversee them, but to actually listen to how they're doing it, because you can glean a lot of simplicity out of it. It's always harder to write a shorter sentence to a person in an email than it is a long one, right? And that comes from experience, unfortunately. Like this video. This video, see, I kept it under 10 minutes though, right? So listen to people who seem like they're the simpletons or the inexperienced people in a group. And if you are a simple person, have the courage to ask the question. Say, with all due respect, I bow down to your skills, senior gray beard admins, or whatever you're going to have to do. Because honestly, these people's egos is going to get in their way. It's actually big experienced people's egos is one of the most dangerous things to a project you will ever encounter. These people have learned how to manage perception. They've learned how to cover their butt. And that mindset can destroy a project and a team. So you have to figure out how to be deferent to it as well and say, okay, now I know I don't know anything. I'm just humble, stupid guy here. I'm just brand new, inexperienced, stupid, but I'm inexperienced. Let me just ask a few questions here. What's wrong with this thing? Just help me understand it. I'm sure there's a reason. What do you think about that? And then present that as if, I actually probably don't know. I'm just asking a simple question. The more that we have that from our junior engineers and from people who are just coming to the project, who don't have baggage, the more our systems will get simpler to use. And the less likely to run into a disastrously long 5,000 line Helm chart, which is what I've been fighting with. I've been fighting with all these. I hate Helm. I mentioned Helm the other night to somebody else and they about broke a gasket. So the short answer is it's yes. The answer is yes. It is harder and easier to design large projects with more experience. Now I'm definitely able to organize things and modularize things much better now. So that's probably a good thing. So that's the answer. I'm gonna go ahead and end that video. Let's see. We have Linda says here, one of my friends had a job where he could not question anything because his senior and management higher up would not listen. The company ended up going bankrupt. Absolutely. Listen to the people who actually implement this stuff. The reason that nature has designed death. Death is built into our DNA. There's no reason that we need to die. This is amazing. You go watch the gerontology science in Oxford. It's crazy. There's no reason for humans to die. If we just, for some reason, we stop producing growth hormone, and that's why we die. And nature has decided, whether you think it's divine or not, nature has decided that the best, that no matter what, humans are incapable of changing to the degree that if the continuation of the species requires you to die. Because if you don't die, you're not making room for progress. And you better be careful how you treat that. You really do need to show. There's been a lot of stuff coming from young people where they're like, they won't use Vim. They think that Vim should be written in Lua, which is stupid. And it's not just because I'm old. It's just a stupid idea on several levels, and I can justify that. So, this isn't about being an old boomer, okay boomer kind of thing, disrespecting the boomers. It's more about have the courage to present your idea, but also have the courage to listen when they have something to say and pick through the mean stuff that they say to you, because they will, and see if you can find something of value in there and go forward. So yeah. I had to ask because there are rumors that say microdosing some specific things are being done by people who need creativity in the workplaces. Yeah. Yeah, I think that's probably true. Yep. And I would say that that's true of Rust. People have been doing, we don't want to make this into Rust, but people have been microdosing on Rust to try to figure it out. And that's fine. That's fine. I hate it. I told you I hate it. I've had enough of dosage to know that thing is never going to do anything significant. And I can back that up. That claim up. It's not just a personal attack. But that's a good example of that, right? So you need to keep your mind open at the same time. Anyway, you learned 6 different stacks before I fully stuck with one in depth. Didn't know where to support the stack without that. Yeah. All right, I'm going to end that video. We're a little bit over.